Hi and welcome to this week's WoW Flash, and looking forward to BfA as is increasingly going to be the case now, but trying to avoid too much in the way of spoilers. Though I am going to warn just at the start of this, because of the nature of this, there might be some small spoilers that are a necessary part of it now. Because a lot of the videos I'm doing now are to do with Battle for Azeroth, and as a result, a lot of your comments are to do with Battle for Azeroth as well. So, little warning there, if you want to steer completely clear of spoilers, probably best to avoid these from now. I will keep putting it in the title though, minor spoilers. So, the first one is to do with the redistribution of races, shall we say, on Azeroth, when the story runs its course for the end of Legion, shall we say, before Battle for Azeroth starts. So it says, well, we know both continents are going to be split, Kalimdor for the Horde and Eastern for the Alliance. Which is true. Blizzard have even designed wallpapers along those lines where it's got like a Kalimdor shown in the background with red and the Horde symbol there, and Eastern Kingdoms blue, the Alliance Kingdom. Alliance logo, sorry. It says so they can settle pretty much anywhere they want. I mean, Alliance is capping the old Kingdom of Stromback, and Trollbane is coming back there, and Lordaeron is capped back as well. It's like you're winning a game of Arathi Basin here. Cap this, cap that. So there's plenty of space. Having their own, each separate continent separated by the sea works quite well for me. In theory, yes, I suppose. The slight query I have with all this, one is I still don't know why they're doing it. There must be an end game for this. There must be a plan, and it's not necessarily for Battle for Azeroth before this comes to fruition. Maybe they're thinking for the following expansion. I don't know. It worries me, though, that they want to have each of the two major continents being almost entirely within the grasp of one faction. It concerns me. One concern I had, just when, Battle for Azeroth, before it was even announced and it became clear that Kulturas was going to form part of it, I was thinking, oh no, because I remember Warcraft 2, which is what introduced us to Kulturas in the first place, and it was like naval stuff there, and I don't like that. I didn't like it then, and I wouldn't like it in World of Warcraft. And I'm thinking, well, if you split, what's the rationale for splitting up the two continents? Yeah. Is it going to be naval engagements at some point in the game? Please, God, no. But just getting back to this, yes, okay, yeah, there's all that space. Land being reclaimed back. I wouldn't necessarily say Lordaeron itself being reclaimed back, because although, yes, what sort of state is it going to be in? I mean, what sort of state is it in now, quite frankly? Right, look at Lordaeron. If the Forsaken were to just leave quite happily, what Alliance race would want to go and live there as it is now? Quite frankly, we would just tear the whole place down anyway. But I rather think we'll be tearing the whole place down in reclaiming that whole area. And, sorry, I say we, I'm Alliance, sorry. That's all there is to it. Even when I'm Horde, I'm Alliance. Even when I was a Horde player for a year, I was still Alliance. So, the other thing, though, is I don't see Blizzard spending a lot of time creating something on what is old zones. But they've sort of got to do something. But I don't know what. I am curious. I'm really curious to find out what. Because they have to do something. But surely they're not going to do a massive resculpture of the landscape again. Even, I mean, obviously they won't do a cataclysm type thing. But, even to the point of putting in new buildings and stuff like that. For what benefit is that? I think they learnt that lesson from Cataclysm. They got no real benefit from all that resculpting of the lands. Anyway. Next one. This is more to do with the Horde Alliance relative numbers. So it says, originally Alliance was massively overpopulated on all servers and Blizzard massively overtuned, especially for PvP Horde's uglier races to try and balance the numbers. That led to anyone who cared about PvP rolling Horde, because pretty much any Pug versus Pug would massively favour Horde. It says here, which led to the PvP servers are all Horde heavy and PvE tended towards Alliance. I'm not sure about that at all. I think there was probably more Alliance in raiding a long time ago. I think it was, to be fair, there may have been, I only say may, have been a significant advantage in being Alliance in the early days of raiding. Now, the only reason I say may is because it seemed a bit more balanced towards Alliance and Horde, but there were very good Horde guilds as well, so I don't know that that was the case. But it's fairly obvious. I mean, I think Paladins brought more utility than Shaman. It's just my opinion. I didn't play Shaman in vanilla, so I can't directly compare. And also, you know, people point to Dwarf Sphere Ward. Fear Ward eventually became something that all priests had in TBC. But in vanilla, it was only Dwarf Priests. Each of the races of priests, it was specifically for priests, no one else got this, got their own special ability. It was really weird that it was only for priests at that. But the Dwarf Priests, not that there were that many of them, but the ones that there were, had Fear Ward. Now, it wasn't strictly speaking needed, because a warrior tank, for example, was able to, you know, a fear was usually fairly predictable. You knew when it was coming, and they could change to berserker stance, and that stopped them being feared, and then back to defensive stance. I suppose it was useful for the priests themselves, because they could put it on themselves, and they wouldn't get feared as well, unlike Onyxia, you know, I'm thinking, and other sort of similar dragon fears, so that they could carry on healing the tank, although the fears didn't usually last that long. So was it really that useful? It was certainly prized. I don't know that it was that useful. But I don't think there's ever been a situation where PvP players have been predominantly Horde and Alliance players have been predominantly PvE. I'm not sure about that. But it's very difficult to say if you're going a long way back, because I can't really remember. But these days, I mean, the situation is now, the problem we have is now, and I've sort of said before, someone's talking about the stream as well, is it almost, because someone was saying on the stream, oh, you know, now that Alliance have got like Lightforce, Draenei and Void Elves, doesn't that rebalance it? It doesn't. I mean, even if they were super awesome races, which they're alright, it doesn't make any difference. The vast majority of available players on the Horde side, Legion has already been really, really difficult to recruit for everyone. Everyone tells me this. Horde and Alliance, high-end guilds to lower-end guilds. It's been tough recruiting in Legion. It's almost, and yet we know there's more raiders. It's weird, but it's very difficult to find experienced raiders now. I mean, it's a good thing in a way, if you know, it's purely anecdotal this, but maybe it's just the case that there's a lot more people raiding in Legion that didn't raid before Legion. You know, and that's a good thing, that more people are coming into raiding. But it's been very, very difficult to recruit. And as difficult as it recruit for anyone, it's way harder to recruit as Alliance, because there are far fewer guilds to draw your pull from. It means having to take in a much larger number of very inexperienced players. And it's like any team, you can have inexperienced players. In fact, it's necessary because, of course, you know, people have to have their first break in any team. But you don't want loads. I mean, imagine a kitchen. You can have the odd, you know, chef that's inexperienced, but you can't have everyone in the kitchen that's inexperienced. It goes wrong. It's the same thing in a raid, really. If you take a large number of very inexperienced people, then it becomes problematic. You know, you've got more trainees than mentors, effectively. But I mean, that is the problem we're going to have, and it can only get worse in BfA. It doesn't matter what they do to racials now. It really doesn't matter. It doesn't matter even if they're balanced now. I mean, some people, you know, and I did a video a bit ago where I was looking at the pure DPS benefits of them, and it was they were within 1% of each other. It's pretty close. So, you know, people will blow out of proportion just how strong those racials are. But the fact of the matter is, it makes no difference. It would make no difference if Alliance suddenly got better racials. The imbalance is so huge now. Someone else in the stream was saying that their guild is going Horde next expansion. They're a top 200 guild. You know, we're not talking about top 50 or anything like that. Top 200, which is still very high, but not usually the sort of guild that en masse changes faction, unless there's a very, very good, because that's a lot of people sharing out a lot of money. Unless there's a really good reason to do it, you don't do that. But that's what people are doing. I've heard zero stories about Horde guilds changing faction to be Alliance. And I will bet you there's none. But there are guilds that are changing to Horde. And that's what's so grim about the And we'll have to see what Battle for Azeroth brings, but what I think it's going to bring is a lot of pain, quite frankly. Anyway, rambled on about that one, flogging off. So, next one. Okay, so this is about weapons, using weapons in Battle for Azeroth. So they said, hopefully they go away. This is to do with artifacts, of course. And something happens so that I can play with fist weapons as rogue again. Nothing needs to happen at all. You're right, the artifact weapons are going away. We're not going to be using them in Battle for Azeroth. I still hope to be using them as we level. I see no reason not to. But, you know, Blizzard haven't said anything exactly how it's going to work yet. I was doing the video on how I think it will work. Certainly it's the way I would implement it myself. But, yeah, in Battle for Azeroth content itself, we're just going to be using weapons. We're going to get weapons from quest rewards again, as well as in dungeons, things like that. And it's the full scale. The weapons that we can use has never changed. Rogues in Legion can use fist weapons. You wouldn't, of course, because they're on, you know, you have to use your artifact weapon. But you can equip a fist weapon if you wanted to. And in Battle for Azeroth, I assume, I haven't seen any fist weapons yet, but then no, I wouldn't expect to. I haven't played any classes yet that use them habitually. So when I level my rogue up, it'll be interesting to see if any of the quest rewards are fist weapons. They may well be. They may well be. But nonetheless, I'm sure there will be some fist weapons coming back into it somewhere. And you would be able to use them. And the same goes for everyone else. Let's say you're a mage. Some mages, of course, like to use a staff. Some like to use a one-hander and an offhand. And, you know, or in terms of the one-hander, some like to use a sword. Some like to use a dagger. And generally speaking, okay, if you're a raider especially, you'd probably still go for whatever is the best for you. But a lot of people get to choose. They get to choose the one that they prefer to fit the look that they want their character to have. Not really been able to do that in Legion, but you will be able to do that in Battle for Azeroth. So that'll be quite good. I mean, I quite like the artifact system. I wouldn't have minded if it was just a permanent addition to the game. But it, you know, is true to say that people who do like a particular look were sort of frozen out of some of their transmogs because of it. That was a shame. That's going. It's you're going to be able to use the weapons you want again. So yeah, people like that will definitely be happy. In fact, I was asked on another thing about Holy Paladins. Can we use shields again? Yes, there are even intellect shields that I've had as quest rewards. So absolutely. Next one, it says, I'm interested to find out what the questing will be like once we hit level 120 and the other continent opens up to us. Will I have an alliance questline in Nazmir that is similar in terms of lore? So the Horde's leveling questline, for example, it would be completely different. Well, this is interesting, of course, because in Legion we had this idea of 4 leveling zones, and then you had your 5th zone specifically for level cap, but there's a lot of questing content. And it's like Blizzard were trying to break this association we have between questing in zones and leveling, because they shouldn't be the same thing. Questing in zones should just be a piece of content in the game. And I was fully supportive of the fact that they had this whole zone that was just for quests, and it was just for level cap. You couldn't actually access it until you were at level cap. Couldn't do it. Can't get the quests. And I imagine they would continue that on. And again, I was just talking about this today. The obvious way to do it, yes, is that we know we're going to go to the other, you know, island. I would call it more than a continent. I think it's quite small, 3 zones. But, you know, we're going to go to the other island for world quests. We know that. So, of course, it makes sense to have some quest lines there as well. We don't know anything yet in terms of what's on there. We can't even get to level cap yet. But I doubt it would be along the same lines. For example, we're not going to be doing quests for the Zandalari trolls as Alliance. And, of course, as Horde, you're not going to be doing quests for the Kulturans. However, there are occupants of both islands that are not with either the Horde or the Alliance that you could still do. So it may be that there are some quests that you can still do. It is a bit boggling because there's obviously going to be something very different. We've been used in the last few expansions to essentially doing the same content, the same quests. I know in WoD, you know, we had Frostfire Ridge for Horde and Shadowmoon Valley for Alliance. But after that, you were doing the same zones. And although you picked your quests up off from different people, and there were some quests that were a little different, most of them were the same. And we're not obviously having that for leveling purposes in Battle for Azeroth. That's gone. We're having a completely unique leveling experience. But that doesn't mean to say that some of the quests wouldn't appear. Like the quest, for example, there's one on Kulturas where you basically joining a band of pirates, pretending to. The Horde could do that again. I mean, they could do that, sure. So any quests that are not directly linked to either, the authorities on Kulturas or the Zandalari trolls on Zandalar could be up for grabs. I would like to think that they do completely different ones. But I would like to think that there's actual quests to do, not just world quests on the opposite one, to take the place of what we had with Legion with Suramar. That's what I would think. But again, we don't know. We don't know. Next one. So again, this is to do with sort of the migration video I was doing, or more specifically about Alliance being largely refugee races now. Almost all the Alliance races are basically homeless. It says here, when the original people who settled Azeroth are being replaced by aliens. I don't think they really settled Azeroth in a way. And everything's sort of changed anyway. But I did do a little pie chart just to show what it's like. Treating each of the allied races as different races, of course, because, Blizzard say they are, and they've given them separate racials, so that's fair enough. It's still, the vast majority are still denizens of Azeroth and always have been. I was umming and ahhing about Forsaken, actually. I, in the end, put them as native to Azeroth because the idea of Forsaken is they do have their own minds. They've sort of got their own memories. They can remember when they were still alive. And when they were still alive, they were all, native to Azeroth. So for that reason, I put it there. But I was thinking of not. And the reason for that is because they were all raised effectively by the power of the Lich King, even if not directly by the Lich King himself. The Lich King, of course, being a Legion creation based on an Orc spirit from Draenor. And so, yeah, I was thinking, because it's sort of Orc stroke Legion effects, spells, magic, maybe the Forsaken should be, but I just thought no, they do remember who they were, so in spirit at least, then that's what they are. But yeah, so it's still the majority Azeroth there. There's a suitable slice of cake there. 2 Draenei ones and Orcs themselves, of course. Next one. Now, here we go. So this was to do with a class developer who joined the Paladin Discord this week to have a little chat. And someone was saying, by the name of John Yang, and someone was saying, doesn't surprise me to see John Yang is one of the good developers. He did good work with Diablo 3 Reaper of Souls. Now, I don't know about that. I don't really follow developers as such. The only developers I know are the ones who sort of reach out, whether for good or for bad. And it's a shame there's not more do this sort of thing. I hope that other... Because I sort of hope other class developers look at it and think, oh, this could be a fruitful thing to do, to actually reach out. I think this developed very strongly in WoD, and maybe, I'm not saying it definitely wasn't there before, but in WoD, they seem to have very much a siege mentality, because you could sometimes see developers getting a bit defensive at times. A lot of criticism comes their way, I could sort of understand that. But the community managers are effectively PR people. And you know what PR people are like, good PR people. The customers always right, that sort of thing, smile and wave, blah, 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 blah. They're there to smooth out relationships and to ensure a good, solid relationship between customers and business. And during WoD, even the community managers were being openly, very publicly rude to customers. Now, I'm not saying some of them didn't deserve it in a way, but it still reflects badly when that happens. So I think there was this huge them and nuts, because of course a lot of criticism came their way during WoD. Can you blame them? Can you blame the customers for criticising it? So, no, obviously Legion's gone a lot better. But I still wonder if there is that siege mentality there. Because Ian Hazacostas, when he became assistant game director, one of the things you instantly noticed was the live developer Q&As. That's what they're called. It's not called the Lore and Watcher show, but that's basically what it's become. Every now and then we get a live Q&A that features a different developer that wants to talk about their particular niche thing. I could probably count the number of such developers that have done that on the fingers on one hand. I can't actually remember how many there's been. It's not very many. The vast majority of those things have been done with Ian Hazacostas and Law. Sorry, I keep calling him Law. I can never remember what his actual name is. I should do. I used to watch him before he became a community manager. But you know what? I'm bad with names. So, you think to yourself, so why is that? There can only be two possible reasons for that. One, he's a control freak and he wants to make sure that no one says anything that they shouldn't be saying publicly yet. Or two, that he would love it if other developers said, yeah, I'd like to do that, but that the other developers don't want to. Which is fine, by the way. I'm not saying they should, because it's not their job. I don't think they should be forced into a public relations role when games development, let's face it, games development can be seen as appealing to someone who enjoys sitting in a windowless room being geeky. That's fine. If you're not into putting yourself in front of a camera and talking, that's fine. But if people, the reason some developers are not wanting to do that is just because they think they have this them and us attitude with the community, that would be a shame, and I don't think that's necessary. So what I'd be hoping from Mr. Yang's interaction there is other developers go, actually, do you know what? It can be really useful. It can be a really good PR exercise, as well as getting some useful ideas. What a good thing to do. You know, we should do more of this. I hope. Because I wonder if we might have more live developer Q&As if more people are up for them. You know, I mean, when we didn't have one last month. We had one in January to hype up the pre-orders for BfA and the release of Allied Races. That was it, and that was basically a promotional video. It wasn't really the usual. I mean, they're all promotional, of course, but that wasn't really to talk about anything coming in imminently, other than the pre-order stuff. There hasn't been one since, or has actually? Was there? There might have been one on BfA, I suppose. I can't remember now, though. There certainly hasn't been one for a few weeks. And it's the sort of thing where I think to myself, there could easily be one of these a week if you shared the load, if different people did it, different developers. Talked about, you know, you could say at the end of each one, okay, and next week we're going to have such and such a person who works on PvP talents or something like that. And then people can send in their questions on that. And it could be really good. So that's what I would like to see. All right, next one. So it's from a Rhett video, but it's not Rhett specific. I was doing it one, and I was using as a couple of examples some parts of logs that were not good. Pretty bad, in fact. And there's someone saying here, I'm always amazed at people's skill. I think we have to understand, like Blizzard themselves saying, not very many people access things on the internet to do with World of Warcraft. Like, not many people look up how to do things. And it's not just in games, it's in everything. I mean, I've just been watching recently a couple of old episodes of Gordon Ramsay's Kitchen Nightmares. The UK ones, the good ones. Sorry, America, but the American ones, he just goes over the top with his insults just for the sake of entertainment. I'm not saying they're not instructive, but it's just too... is unnecessarily insulting. The ones that he did before in the UK, before he went over to America, were much more him. I'm not saying he wasn't rude, of course he's rude. But the point is, you watch some of these people running these businesses, and you obviously it's failing, so that means they're doing something wrong. Usually it's pretty badly wrong as well. And one thing that you sort of notice quite often as a recurring theme is that they lack the experience and they've never tried to learn since they opened up the business. So here's someone, here you've got people who are putting their life savings into it, in serious stuck. If the restaurant closes, then they're bankrupt, you know, major problems, they're in the poorhouse. And even those people won't go out and try and learn the skills that they apparently lack. So why would someone playing a game fairly casually do the same? They wouldn't. So I think, you know, that's why we have to, you need to understand. A lot of people don't know what we would consider the basics. The people who do spend time with the community, sharing ideas, looking up things. A lot of people don't have that. I mean, some things you might think are common sense, but, you know, for some people they're not. You know, without a basic understanding of the mechanics. So, you know, a lot of people just don't understand the mechanics. A lot of people won't, you know, obviously these people have put their logs onto Discord, so they have actually gone out seeking help and have hopefully gone away much wiser, which is fantastic. Well, I hope. But yeah, it doesn't surprise me because, as I say, people don't naturally, even when something's really important, people don't naturally go out seeking to study. I think once people leave school, people just think that's it. And not that many people actively seek new skills. Where people develop new skills, it's usually because their bosses made them go on a course or something. But people don't usually do it off their own bat. And that's for something that brings the money in. So yeah, much less so in a game. Next one. This is again about where we're going to put Night Elves in particular. I mean, Worgen, I've got a bit of an idea about where they can go, but there's options for Worgen. There are absolutely options for where Worgen can go. I mean, Gilneas itself could be revamped. You know, put the doors back up, make new hinges, get a, you know, road sweeper out. Could be all right. Night Elves, where are they going to go? Someone said here, I could see Nell shacking up with the Draenei. Could you? Could you really? So the Night Elves currently are used to living in a really tall tree, very high up. They're also used to being surrounded by nature, open skies, fresh air. So you think they're going to be persuaded by the Draenei to say, do you know what? Come live with us. We live in this big hole in the ground. And in the bottom of this hole is a load of high-tech space junk. It's as far removed from what the Night Elves are used to as you can imagine. I don't think they're going to do that. And if the whole purpose of, you know, Teldrassil, you know, having what Teldrassil's going to have to it, being to remove the alliance essentially almost entirely to the Eastern Kingdoms and Horde vice versa. Obviously, we're still going to have Draenei effectively on Kalimdor, even though an island just off it. And we're still going to have Blood Elves effectively, well, actually on Eastern Kingdoms, because that is joined by land. That's still going to be a thing. But apart from that, yeah. So I suppose wherever they go has to be Eastern Kingdoms. I don't know where. But I'm pretty sure it's not going to be down a hole with space junk when they're used to living up there in a big old tree, surrounded by squirrels and fluffy things like that. Next one. Oh, I do want to talk about this. It's actually quite funny, though. I'd not noticed this. So there's a particular video I've got, which I'll come to in a moment. Someone's noticed it had 666 upvotes and 66 downvotes. All the sixes. Don't worry, it's changed now. There's now 668 upvotes. Still 66 downvotes though. So you know, it's still a palindrome though. It's a nice little palindrome going on. But yeah, this video, it's a curse. It's worrying me. It's seriously worrying me. The particular video in question was a video I did on Lord of the Rings Online. So I was playing that last summer. You know, there was a couple of interesting things happening. First of all, it changed ownership. You know, the parent company wanted to get rid of it, but the game's developers themselves, who of course were employees there, wanted to keep it going. So they formed their own. They basically acquired the rights and they formed their own little studio to keep it going. Great. I wanted to support that. And of course, there was a new expansion. So, you know. And an expansion that's post Lord of the Rings, which is interesting. So it's all very scary, I imagine, for them. Not only are they forming their own studio when they've just been employees, but also they're having to continue the expansion beyond the point at which the ring has been destroyed, which can't be easy because they can't draw directly on Lord of the Rings storyline. But anyway, I did a video on it, and to my shame, it's the most viewed video I've ever done. But worse than that, meaningless milestones ahead. So I did this last summer. It still gets views now. If I go into my analytics and I just look at, say, the last week or even few weeks, it's always in the top 10 of most viewed videos. Hell. The downside to this is it's already on about 98,000 views. It's going to get to 100,000 views. I really didn't think the first video I would ever get to 100,000 views would be one that's not even anything to do with World of Warcraft. In fact, because, you know, of the nature of that particular game, I don't even get to play it except at summer. It's the only time I've got enough time to play it. Because you have to give a long run up to it. You know, it's got a few good things about it, especially if you're a Tolkien fan. If you're not a Tolkien fan, God almighty, there's so many bad things about it though. And one of the bad things about it, it's not easy to just pick it up again, leave it and pick it up again a few weeks later. You have to sort of play it every day for a bit. I think you do anyway. So yeah, I've not got long. I reckon, I mean, it doesn't get, you know, I reckon I've got another month or two to try and do a video that's going to get more views. It's not happening. It's not happening. Anyway, last one. So again, coming back to where we're going to rehouse people. So I actually just said this. I should have waited for this. It says, I would prefer Gilneas to be viable again. I like the atmosphere there. If not, then Blizzard should again shows again their love for the Horde. I don't think there's any Horde bias with this one, because we also have to ask where the Forsaken are going to go. It says, why should my faction be a group of homeless? Well, okay. That was the point of my video. We are basically homeless. Yeah. But Gilneas could work. You know, they could just repopulate it. Storyline-wise, I don't think there's any reason not to just take it back. And you could argue that being displaced from their adopted home could give them the impetus to do that. You could possibly... But the thing is, though, I was going to say you could possibly bring out a small patch based on it. I don't think you'd bring it out in the pre-expansion patch because it's got nothing to do with the next expansion coming up. Or not much to do with it. The other issue is I don't know when these events are going to happen, because one thing they said this in the last expansion as well, in Legion. They specifically said it for Battle for Azeroth as well. They've said that the game begins immediately after the events of the cinematic. So that attack on Lordaeron that happens in the cinematic is what must happen in the pre-expansion patch. As such, at that point, the Forsaken have only just been displaced. Now, does that mean that at this point, the Night Elves and Worgen have been displaced beforehand? You know, is Lordaeron retaliation for that? I'm going to guess so. So I don't know where it's all working out in the timeline, because there was something very funny that Anduin said in BfA as well, which is more of a major spoiler, so I don't want to talk about that here. So yeah, I don't know where, timing-wise, where all these people are suddenly going to go, or when. Some of them it'll be before the launch of BfA. Some of them it might be after. And I think Worgen, I think I know where they're going to be. I don't think they're going to go to Gilneas. I do think I know where they're going to go. I've already talked about that in another video. So I think I know where they're going to go. But yeah, for me, Night Elves are the big mystery. Don't know. I can't even think of anywhere that without a lot of effort. Because, I mean, I did talk about, oh, might they expand into Ashenvale and Darkshore? And then, you know, someone pointed out, and I think they're quite right, that if the purpose of doing this is to move them to Eastern Kingdoms, to move the Alliance basically entirely to into Eastern Kingdoms, then that's a non-starter as well. And we can't just... someone talked about the park, renovating the park in Stormwind. I don't think it's feasible to move them to Stormwind at all. I don't think they like that. I think they need to be, you know, with nature. And then here's another question. I mean, it's, you know, it's all right thinking of night elves and night elves. There's two more questions I have with this. One is, that's not going to impress the druids. They don't want to be away from Moonglade. And the other thing is, there has to be somewhere, because in Battle for Azeroth, people are still going to make night elf characters. Where are they going to start from? People are still going to make Forsaken characters. Where are they going to start from? So there has going to have to be new starter content for those two races, you would think. It's all up in the air. The speculation can be wild, except with speculation has to have something to attach itself to, and I can see no hooks to attach anything to at the moment. I've got no idea. None at all. So with that baffling note, I'll leave it there. Thanks very much for watching. Hope you enjoyed it. If you did, don't forget to like, comment, subscribe and share for further content. Until next time, I'll see you later.